atheism tends towards ultra controlling personality cults. Okay. Now, Christianity and many other religions, we get called cults, and evangelical Christianity gets called cults all over the world. We're kind of the fundamentalist, the radical wing. We take the Bible seriously, and in France, we're linked with the cults and the JWs and whatnot. Different people are called cults, but it's easy to label perhaps religious people, and atheists you often take a kind of high ground on this, like so let me know I've met some lovely, reasonable atheists who don't take this position, but some of you kind of look down on us, people who are following churches. You're like, wow, you're being brainwashed, man. These guys are controlling you. Well, surely you could look back in history and see that's happened, where there has been sort of state brainwashing and cult-like control. However, atheism is not exempt from that, and it tends towards it. In fact, you look at the 20th century history, then you've got certain boys like the Pot, Stalin, and Mao, North Korea, Kim Il-jong. A lot of you might rightly say he's not an atheist, but nonetheless, it was originally an atheist regime. And they tended to be very, very dominant figures, and they'd often release their own books, the little red book, and their books would be read. They'd kind of be honoured positions, and they'd be they'd have a very cult-like following. And in terms of control, I mean, they were really controlling. Let's be honest. There's been no state like it in the 20th century in terms of the degree of control they seek to exercise over their populace, and the limited freedom of thought that your atheist states have allowed. So as a record, we talk about all the Eastern Bloc, all that, and so we find it a bit rich when we hear from atheists, oh, you're in a cult, keep the Christianity, it's dangerous, keep it out of schools and stuff. We actually believe that atheism has a much higher tendency to, particularly in states, when it enters the state and tries to push its agenda, it tends to want all religions squashed out. You can't have a discussion of alternative views. I'm all for atheism being included as a discussion. I think it's an interesting viewpoint and flawed at many levels, and I'd like to discuss it and why people follow it and so on. I think that's very interesting. But you seem to want to remove, as a rule, a lot of atheists would like to remove religion being taught as fact and or being discussed very seriously, looking at the history, looking at the academic, using people's minds. And I think these things should happen. I'd actually say it's fundamental to our scriptures to have this free thinking, and it says, let each man be fully convinced in his own mind, and that's part of our system. And you can really see why that's reflected in England in the way we allow all these discussions, and that's why the American Constitution had the freedom of expression so high up in its constitution, because these were like founding Christian principles that have come out, but they're very much not part of the atheist thing, which seems to often view all religion and maybe in particular Christianity as a threat. So yeah, the cult thing coming back at you. I'm not saying this to put you down, but I'm just saying, you know what, you point the finger at us, but hey, come on, let's be fair. We admit there are Christian cults, for sure, definitely some very damaging Christian, Christian churches, of course we'd say they're not really Christian, but definitely, I'm with you. But hey, come on, atheism, come on, a few cults there, eh?